The Broken Bucket, a Zen story for rest and reflection. Chapter 1. The Master's Garden. High on a mountain where the clouds rested like cotton over the pines, there stood an ancient monastery. Its stone walls had witnessed hundreds of sunrises, and its gardens knew the secret of peace that only time can teach. There lived Master Kenzo, an old man with a silver beard and eyes that shone with the gentleness of clear water. His garden was famous throughout the region, not for its size, nor for exotic flowers, but for the serenity that emanated from every stone, every leaf, every drop of dew resting at dawn. Each morning, before the sun rose over the horizon, Master Kenzo would walk slowly along the gravel path. His bare feet made almost no sound. The mountain air filled his lungs, and he smiled as he felt life awakening around him. To water his garden, the master used 2 wooden buckets attached to a bamboo pole that rested across his shoulders. One of the buckets was perfect, without a single crack, holding every drop of water from the spring to the garden. The other, however, had a small fissure along its side, a crack as thin as a sigh, but enough for the water to leak slowly on the long walk back. Each day, by the time they reached the garden, the perfect bucket delivered all of its water. The broken one, however, arrived with only half, and so it had been for 2 years. The master never complained. He simply placed the buckets down, watered the plants with what he had, and returned to the spring when needed. His movements were like an ancient dance, repeated so many times that they had become a form of meditation. The young monks in the monastery often wondered why the master didn't fix the broken bucket. Some thought he might be too poor to buy a new one. Others believed he simply hadn't noticed the crack. But none dared to ask, for they knew the master's lessons always arrived at the perfect moment, like flowers that bloom only when ready. The evening wind whispered through the bamboo grove, creating a melody that seemed to rise from the heart of the earth itself. Shadows stretched long and soft, painting the garden with golden and violet hues. And in that perfect moment between day and night, Master Kenzo sat on his small wooden porch, watching the light transform. Beside him, the 2 buckets rested in silence, one proud of its flawless work, the other sunk in quiet shame, a shame only it could feel. For although no one knew it, the broken bucket was conscious, could feel, and it secretly suffered for its imperfection. Chapter 2. The Bucket's Shame. As the stars began to flicker in the night sky, the broken bucket remained awake, lost in thought. Unlike humans, who sleep to rest, the ancient objects of the monastery held a quiet awareness that awakened in the stillness of night. It looked at its companion, the perfect bucket, peacefully resting after another flawless day of work. How different their lives were. Each morning, the perfect one fulfilled its purpose without fail, delivering every drop it carried. It was useful, reliable, perfect. Why can't I be like that? Thought the broken bucket. Every day the master works so hard, walks the same distance, carries the same weight. But because of me, he can only water half the garden. For 2 years it had kept this sorrow. 2 years watching the water slip through its crack, leaving a glistening trail along the path. 2 years of feeling inadequate, useless, a burden to the kind master who had never uttered a single word of reproach. The full moon bathed the courtyard in silver light, and in that glow the bucket saw its reflection in a small puddle. There was the crack, dark and unmistakable, an imperfection it could not hide, a flaw that defined its entire existence. It remembered the day the crack had formed, a careless bump against a stone long ago. At the time it had seemed insignificant, just a small scratch. But over years of use, that scratch had become a fissure that wept water with every journey. The master could easily replace me, it thought. There are artisans in the village who make new buckets, or he could seal the crack with pine resin. But he doesn't. Hasn't he noticed? Or am I so insignificant that I'm not even worth repairing? These thoughts swirled endlessly in its mind like leaves caught in a whirlpool. Shame was a heavier burden than any water it had ever carried. A dull, constant ache that followed it every dawn. The perfect bucket began to snore softly, a sound like a murmuring stream. It was at peace, satisfied with its flawless day. It knew nothing of imperfection, nothing of the pain of failing one's purpose. Tomorrow, decided the broken bucket as the night deepened, I will speak to the Master. I'll confess everything. I'll ask for forgiveness for these 2 years of failure. Maybe he'll discard me, but at least I'll be honest. A cool breeze stirred the courtyard, rustling the branches of a nearby cherry tree. Its leaves whispered an ancient song, one that spoke of impermanence and acceptance. But the broken bucket was too absorbed in its pain to hear that wisdom. Finally, when the night reached its deepest stillness, the bucket too rested. But its rest brought no peace, only the certainty that tomorrow it would face its truth. Chapter 3: The Confession. Dawn arrived soft and golden, as it always did on the mountain. The first rays of sunlight touched the monastery tiles, slid down the stone walls, and reached the small courtyard where the buckets rested. Master Kenzo appeared in his simple robe, barefoot as always. He approached the buckets with his slow, deliberate gait, lifted the bamboo pole, and placed it across his shoulders, the 2 buckets hanging on either side. The path to the spring wound through ancient pines and ferns that shimmered with dew. The master walked in silence, listening to the awakening forest. Birds began their morning symphony, and somewhere in the distance, a stream murmured its eternal song. At the spring, water gushed clear and cold from moss-covered rocks. The master dipped both buckets carefully, waiting patiently for them to fill to the brim. The water was so pure it seemed to sing. As they started back, the broken bucket could no longer bear its silence. The weight of shame was heavier than any water it had ever carried. "Master," it said with a trembling voice, the first word spoken in 2 years. The master stopped, showing no surprise, just a faint smile, as though he had been expecting this moment. "Master," continued the bucket, voice quivering, "I must confess something that has tormented me for a long time. I am deeply ashamed of my imperfection." They walked on, the master's steps slow and steady. Water was already leaking through the crack, leaving a trail of sparkling drops behind them. "For 2 years," the bucket said, "you have walked the same path, carried the same weight. Yet because of this crack in my side, I can only deliver half the water. You receive only half the fruit of your labor because of me." The words poured out like the water through its fissure, unstoppable, liberating. "I've watched my companion fulfill his purpose perfectly, day after day, while I fail. I am defective, a burden. I've wanted to ask forgiveness 1,000 times, to beg you to replace me with a new, whole bucket." The perfect bucket listened in silence, moved. It had never considered that its companion might be suffering. "I am deeply sorry," finished the broken one, "and if a bucket could cry, it would have wept then. I have wasted your time and effort. Please forgive me for my imperfect service." The master walked on in silence for a few moments. The wind rustled the trees like a sigh of understanding. Finally, as they neared the garden, the master spoke. "My dear friend," he said gently, "have you noticed the path we take each day?" The bucket was puzzled. What did the path have to do with its shame? "Tomorrow morning," said the master, "when we return from the spring, I want you to look carefully. Observe the path, and you will understand. For now, rest. Your confession has been heard." And with that, he finished watering the garden and placed the buckets back in their usual spot. The broken bucket spent the day and night in confusion. What could the path reveal? The wait for dawn felt endless. Chapter 4. The Path of Flowers. When dawn came, painted with pink and gold clouds, the broken bucket was filled with both curiosity and anxiety. The master appeared as usual, took the buckets, and began the walk to the spring. This time, the broken one watched closely. After filling both buckets, they started back. Water began to drip as always through its crack. "Now," said Master Kenzo softly, "look to your side of the path." The broken bucket turned to the left, the side where it hung on the master's shoulder. What it saw left it speechless. The entire left side of the path was lined with wildflowers. There were flowers of every color imaginable. Blue as summer skies, yellow as noon sunlight, white as the mountain clouds. Wild roses, violets, daisies, tiny lilies. An endless carpet of color and life stretching from the spring to the garden. "But how?" whispered the bucket. "Now look at the other side," said the master. On the right side, where the perfect bucket hung, there were no flowers, only pine needles, dry leaves, and bare soil. The master stopped under an old pine, set the buckets down, and spoke gently. "My dear bucket," he said tenderly, "I have always known about your crack, from the very first day, and it was precisely because of it that I chose you for this side of the path." The broken bucket listened, overwhelmed. "2 years ago, I planted wildflower seeds along this trail. I knew that each day as we returned, you would water them drop by drop. And thanks to you, this path has become a garden." He touched a yellow flower softly. "The monks enjoy this beauty. Travelers pause to admire it. Butterflies and bees feed here. All this exists because of what you thought was your greatest flaw." A breeze stirred the flowers, carrying their sweet fragrance through the air. "If you had been perfect," said the master with a smile, "this side would be as barren as the other. Your companion serves the garden. You, my friend, beautify the path. Both are essential." The broken bucket felt the heavy weight of shame dissolve. All those years of sorrow now transformed into understanding. "In this monastery," said the master, lifting the buckets again, "we teach that perfection is not the absence of cracks, but the wisdom to find purpose in them." And from that day on, every drop that escaped from the bucket was no longer a symbol of loss, but of life. Chapter 5. The Wisdom of the Garden. From that morning on, everything changed. The broken bucket no longer counted the drops that escaped through its crack. Now each drop felt like a gift, a gentle offering to the earth. Each journey from the spring to the garden became a silent celebration of purpose. The flowers that lined the path seemed to bow as the master passed, shimmering under the morning sun. The air was filled with their fragrance, and even the wind carried a subtle joy. The perfect bucket, watching the change in its companion, felt something awaken inside. For the first time, it questioned its own idea of perfection. That evening, after the master had finished watering the garden and the buckets rested by the wooden porch, the perfect one spoke softly. "I envy you," it said. "Me?" replied the broken bucket, surprised. "Why would you envy me? You have no flaws. You serve the master without loss. You are everything I once wished to be." The perfect bucket hesitated, then whispered, "Yes, I deliver every drop of water. But the path on my side is dry, empty. Yours blooms with life. Your imperfection creates beauty, while my perfection leaves nothing behind." For a long while, they both stayed silent, listening to the gentle song of crickets and the distant murmur of the mountain stream. Then the broken bucket said quietly, "Maybe perfection and imperfection are just two forms of serving." The perfect bucket nodded, feeling a calm it had never known. And in that quiet night, the two rested side by side. One whole, one cracked, both finally at peace. Chapter 6. The Visitor. One summer afternoon, a young monk arrived at the monastery gates. He had walked for days, seeking wisdom from the renowned Master Kenzo. When he entered the garden, he was struck by its harmony. Everything seemed alive yet still, vibrant yet serene. He bowed deeply to the old master, who was sitting beneath a plum tree, pruning dry leaves with patient care. "Master," said the young monk, "I have heard that this is a place of great peace, but I am restless. I seek to perfect myself, to be without faults, without weakness. Teach me how to become perfect." The old master smiled, his eyes gleaming like morning dew. "Follow me," he said. They walked together toward the spring. The master carried his bamboo pole, balancing the two buckets as always, the perfect one and the cracked one. The young monk noticed the trail of water dripping behind them and frowned. "Master," he said carefully, "you are known for your wisdom, yet one of your buckets leaks. Why not replace it?" Kenzo stopped and gestured toward the path. "What do you see?" The monk looked down and gasped. The left side of the trail was covered with wildflowers in full bloom. "Beautiful," he whispered. The master nodded. "Do you see now? If I replaced the cracked bucket, this beauty would vanish. The imperfection you see as a flaw is what gives life here." The monk bowed his head in silence, understanding dawning within him like the slow light of sunrise. "Do not seek perfection," said the master gently. "Seek purpose. A perfect vase holds water, but a cracked one waters the earth. Which is more valuable depends on the heart that sees." The young monk stayed in the monastery for many years. He never forgot the lesson of the broken bucket. Chapter 7. The Rain Returns. One autumn morning, after many seasons had passed, the rains returned to the mountain. The flowers along the path glistened with silver drops, bending gracefully under their weight. The buckets had aged too. The perfect one had small scratches now. The broken one's crack had widened slightly with time. Yet both still served faithfully, side by side, day after day. One morning, as the master rested beneath the plum tree, the broken bucket spoke again. "Master," it said softly, "thank you for teaching me to see beauty in my flaw. But what will happen when I can no longer hold enough water to serve?" Kenzo smiled, looking at the sky where clouds drifted lazily over the peaks. "When that day comes," he said, "you will return to the earth. Your wood will rest beneath these flowers you've helped bloom, and your spirit will continue to water them with the memory of your purpose." The bucket felt a peaceful warmth within its wooden frame. It realized that even its end would be another form of giving. That evening, as the last light of day faded into the sound of rain, the master whispered a quiet haiku. "The crack lets rain in, and the flowers still remember. Brokenness feeds life." Chapter 8. The Lesson of the Mountain. Years later, after Master Kenzo had left his body and joined the silence of the mountain, the monks continued his morning ritual. They still carried the bamboo pole with the two buckets, one whole, one cracked. And every time a drop fell along the path, they smiled, remembering the old master's words. Perfection is not found in being whole, but in allowing life to pass through you. Over time, the story of the broken bucket spread far beyond the monastery. Travelers came to see the path of flowers that had once been watered by imperfection. Some came searching for answers, others just to walk quietly among the blooms. And though the master was gone, his presence lingered in the wind, in the petals, in the quiet hum of the mountain's breath. The broken bucket rested now beneath a cherry tree, its wooden surface softened by years. Each spring, flowers grew over it, pink, delicate, fragrant, and those who saw them would whisper, "Even broken things can create beauty." Then the wind would move gently through the branches, and for a fleeting moment, it felt as if the mountain itself were smiling. End of story. The Broken Bucket, a Zen tale of imperfection and purpose.